A child walks among a crowd of other children laughing at him. From the crowd a stone flies towards his head. Blood spatters from the head wound. The boy lies surrounded by other children. He looks up questioningly at the crowd. Dark silhouettes stand around him with evil smiles, and he understands that his life is terrible. Shoe prints fill his gaze, and the hero notices that everyone hates him and mocks him. A child stands in front of a locked door and wonders when it started. He puts his hand on the doorknob. He thinks that someone, anyone, would be next to him. He opens the front door, from which dark smoke comes out, wondering if there was someone who would love him. A boy with tears in his eyes and a wound on his head calls out to his mother, wondering if there was anyone in this world who would be kind to him. He stops crying and, with empty eyes, calls his mother again, wondering if his life would be better. The child looks at the woman sitting in the mess, calling her mom. The woman looks at the boy with a crazy look and tears in her eyes and calls him Eugene. The woman looks down at the child and asks what it is. The boy looks at his mother with a frightened look and says questioningly, "Mom." The woman grabs the child by the hair and screams, asking why even he is making life difficult for her. She, with a crazy look and tears in her eyes, screams, asking that she dresses the boy, sends him to school. But what does he give her in return? And every time she gets the same thing. Only silence in response. Eugene lowers his head and begins to cry while his mother shouts that if this continues, then he better disappear. Taking an example from his father, she asks the boy to do this. The child understands that on that day his life became even more terrible. Eugene covers his mouth, coughing up blood. He looks at his hand questioningly and notes that, of course, wishes must be fulfilled. The boy looks at his bloody hand, wondering if it is blood, noting in his mind that his life could have been much worse. A dark, practically unlit hospital room, remembering how Eugene went to the hospital with his mother. A woman and her child are sitting opposite the doctor. The boy looks blankly at the doctor while the doctor says that it is some kind of disease, so complex that he did not understand anything. He turns his gaze to his mother, realizing that all he remembers is his mother's eyes, full of hatred. The woman looks at her son with sweat on her face. The foliage of the tree sways in the wind, and the boy notices that his illness progressed every day, and it became as if it was something natural. He leans on the walls and goes to the door, thinking that gradually it became more and more difficult to move, and the situation worsened to such an extent that he was practically unable to go to the toilet on his own. Eugene suddenly feels pain. He falls to one knee, realizing this has happened. The boy sits in a puddle with wet pants, realizing that the moment has come when he really couldn't do it alone. He trembles and looks up in fear. The woman stands over the child and looks at him haughtily as he addresses her. Eugene begins to cry and grabs his mother's skirt, asking her for forgiveness, saying that he will clean up after himself. The woman looks at the child with hatred while she screams that she will not let this happen again, thinking that the day has come when he became incontinent. Eugene, with tears in his eyes, asks his mother not to leave him, and he realizes that after that day he never saw his mother again. The boy lies bleeding from his mouth, thinking that his life has always been like this. Tears flow from his eyes. He realizes that his life has been filled with suffering and loneliness year after year. Eugene closes his tired eyes and realizes that there is no hope for anything better. He closes his eyes and wishes that death, the leader of the kingdom of the dead, would make his next life not such that he would be loved and not offended. A woman's hand reaches out to the bright light. The protagonist looks at her questioningly. A woman in a big hat appears and takes pity on the child. Eugene looks at her confused when she says he deserves a different life. The woman with a smile on her face and a kind look tells Eugene to take her hand. The boy timidly extends his hand. She takes him by his small hand. Wings of light spread behind Eugene. A path of light passes across the sky, and the woman adds that the stars will light up for complete rebirth, and then they will meet again. The woman holds Eugene's hand with a smile and asks the boy not to get sick and be happy in his next life. A bright star falls from the sky. Somewhere in the city a bright light comes on. Two children look joyfully into a crib. The guy, with a lot of bruises, looks in surprise. A newborn blonde baby lies in a crib. He wakes up, looking in surprise at the people around him. A large family stands in front of him, and a blonde child shouts that the baby has opened his eyes, while a brown-haired woman says that they woke up the baby. The protagonist notes that he is a representative of a noble family, the beloved youngest son of the clan. Lights appear in the bright sky and he realizes that his life has acquired colors. Being born a nobleman, he could not have flaws. Two children help the baby get on his feet, and he realizes that his brothers value him very much. The wounded guy reads a book to the child, and the child realizes that his uncle is incredibly caring. A brown-haired woman and a blonde man hug the baby, and he notices that he has very loving parents. The child suddenly begins to cough. He realizes that his happiness has collapsed in an instant. The boy looks at his hands in fear as his parents scream, asking what happened to Eugene. He realizes that there is blood on his hands. The boy sits in bed and he realizes that since the day he was 8 years old, his body has not stopped hurting. He sits with empty and tear-stained eyes, noting that he did not understand why. But not a single treatment helped. The leaves fly off the branch while the hero thinks that it was all pointless. Eugene lies looking at the ceiling, noticing that 5 years have passed. The boy closed his tired eyes and realized that he was already waiting for his end. He remembers how the girl extended her hand to him. He hesitantly took her hand. Eugene grew wings. He suddenly opens his eyes with the realization that he understands. The guy suddenly jumps out of bed with a memory of his past life. He sighs with a surprised face. Sweat runs down his face and he realizes that this is a dark and previously unfamiliar memory of his past life. He remembers the image of a smiling woman, realizing that the magician who met him then was a creator who stands on the border between life and death. The dark silhouette of a woman holds a star, and Eugene realizes that it is Felon, the magician of creation. The guy gets a little worried and blushes, wondering why she chose him. He lowers his eyes in surprise. Worried, he examines his body, wondering why his body is so light, as if he felt better. The guy looks the other way, saying that this can't happen. Eugene meets the shocked guy's gaze. The brunette, looking at the guy in surprise, says with a stutter, "You." Tears begin to flow and he calls the blonde man master. Eugene is surprised by the guy's unexpected reaction. He smiles, tears appear in his eyes and he calls the guy Tur. The curtains in the room open from the wind and the blonde says that he would like to take a walk now. The brunette says that of course he will help the guy get up. The woman appears in his memory, while the blonde realizes that over time, his memories of his past and present lives became one, and questions that he constantly put off came to mind. For example, why Felon, the creator, chose him and why she gave him a new life. Creator Felon holds his hand from his past life, and he wonders what she said to him that day. The blonde looks down sadly and thinks that even if he tried to remember, being a simple person, he could not find the right answer. The guy looks up, confidently looking forward, realizing that that's why he stopped worrying about it, because his life was healed by Felon. A huge monster stretches its tentacles towards the light, while the guy realizes that he is the youngest son of the great Falivia family of warriors, who must protect his world from the abyss on the western border. The blonde fights off the attack, realizing his name is Eugene Falivia. He looks fearfully at the blade swinging at him, realizing that now he was in a hurry. A man with glasses makes multiple attacks on him. Then he shouts to him that his uncle gave him 3 seconds, to which the brown-haired man says that he himself wanted it. The blonde replies that it shouldn't be that serious. The bespectacled man, furiously waving his sword, tells the guy not to complain, but rather to defend himself, because if he continues to stand his ground, he will eventually fail. Eugene clenches his teeth and blocks his blow. The uncle was surprised by the sudden disappearance of the blonde guy. The blonde crouched down sharply, gathering strength in his weapon. The man with glasses looked at him and grinned. Eugene swings his sword sharply, attacking him. The uncle, having blocked the blow, looks at the guy in surprise, saying that it was amazing and dangerous. He descends towards the blonde, placing the sword on his shoulder, saying that such sudden movements carry the risk of defeat. Eugene raises his hands up and walks away, noting that he lost again, although he thought that this time such a tactic would work, to which the man answers him, laughing, that he almost got it. The uncle wipes the sweat from his face with a towel, saying that this time the guy tried hard and suggested that maybe he began to hone his skills on his own, because at his age he could not even imagine using such a technique, because he simply followed what he taught. Eugene collapses on the wooden floor, saying that he feels sick, to which the man excitedly says that he thought the guy was tougher and stronger than before. The uncle approaches the blonde and pats him on the shoulder, saying that however, if anyone looked at Eugene now, they would never understand that he suffered from an incurable disease. The guy clenches his hands into fists and says that he worked a lot on his body. He walks, leaning on Tyr and a crutch, saying that at first it was very difficult to walk. The protagonist presses his leg towards himself in the exercise, noticing that as he recovers, he gets back on his feet. The bespectacled man looks at Eugene with a smile as he says he feels much better, and his brother and Tyr worry about him. He hugs the guy, getting down on one knee, saying he's glad the blonde is healthy again. He looks excitedly at Eugene with a crutch, saying that the protagonist, who for so many years was not able to get out of bed, is fighting again, and all the time he watched him recover. The brown-haired guy is holding the blonde baby over the flowers, saying that it's like they went back to the time when he was a baby and he is so grateful to God that the blonde man has recovered. The wounded guy holds the baby in his arms and Eugene notices that this is his younger uncle, Adair Folivia, and he, like a second father, nursed him in childhood and was his family and close friend. A man in glasses and a mask puts on gloves, and the protagonist notes that his uncle left them 5 years ago because he worked as a doctor in the royal capital, and upon hearing that he had recovered, he immediately returned home. The blonde smiles tenderly, closing his eyes, thinking how grateful he is to his uncle for caring so much about him. An adult man coughs, covering his mouth with his hand. Eugene turns around and looks at him worriedly. 3 silhouettes stand behind the surprised guy. When the man notices what kind of people have gathered here, the man looks arrogantly while the children laugh. He asks that Eugene and Adair are really gathered here together, and the blonde notices that this man is the chairman of the family council, Edric Folivia. The twins talk to each other with smiles, saying that isn't it fun since the sick man and the runaway are practicing fencing together, wondering if they are from the Folivia family. The bespectacled man and Eugene, sitting on his knees, look around at the kids as they say it's annoying that they took over the training room, asking if they don't feel sorry for them at all, while the other scoffs that they deserve each other. Edric Folivia grins arrogantly, hiding behind his hand. He pats the twins on their shoulders, telling them to stop, because Eugene and Adair are annoying, and they are family, so they shouldn't talk about each other like that, to which the twins respond in unison, "Yes, Grandpa." The man with glasses stands up, looking at him and says that they have finished training and he will now clean up and let him go, to which Edric says that he would appreciate it if he did. The man with red eyes, looking down at people, smiles and says that it has been a long time since he saw Adair. The man stands, hiding his gaze behind his glasses, listening to Edric say that he did not think that he would take up a sword again. A brown-haired boy gets punched in the face while they shout at him about being a pathetic loser. A man with a mustache points and shouts at the fallen Adair about why he can't be like his brother, because there are children younger than him, and how he isn't ashamed of this, exclaiming, "Because this boy is his son and the shame of this family." The crowd of red-eyed people grin as the man adds that he is a disgrace to Folivia. The bespectacled man lowers his head when Edric talks about how he grew up being abused by his older brother. The man with red eyes grins, tenses his eyebrows and says that, of course, as soon as brother Adair died, he immediately ran away to the royal court, thinking that he would never pick up a sword again. He puts his hands on the shoulders of the man with glasses and says that he didn't know he had such endurance, and now he saw it again. He looks at Adair with glowing red eyes and asks if he boasted to anyone about his origin, hoping that this is the case. The two boys laugh a little further, while the man continues to ask if there was such a sad person in Folivia, and what the brown-haired man said to the nobles of the royal capital. Maybe he would tell them, because it's even embarrassing to imagine. The man with glasses removes his hands from his shoulders and says that this did not happen, and now he is a doctor and lives a quiet life. The protagonist covers his mouth a little worried, wondering why they are insulting them so much. The guy has tears welling up, and red eyes surround him, and he wonders why he hears these insults and why his whole body is shaking so much. The guy stands in his past life and cries, wondering if he knows the reason. The red silhouette sits under the gaze of red eyes while Eugene thinks that these are memories from his past life, a dark part of his past life that binds him. The twins stand and laugh arrogantly, calling Eugene sick Folivia and Adair a fugitive from Folivia. The children's faces are distorted into a big smile. They say that Eugene and Adair are worth each other, because this is the reason why they are together and why they train together in the gym. The twins distort into dark, blurry silhouettes, saying that it would be better for these two to just disappear from here, because it would be better for the family. An arrogant smile with fanged teeth. The protagonist clenches his teeth in anger. One of the twins gets hit in the face with a fist. The blonde hits the boy with all his might, thinking that now he no longer wants to connect his life with his past. The red-eyed man, along with the other twin, are surprised. Adair looks in shock, worried, and talks to Eugene. The protagonist knocks the boy to the floor, swinging his hand, shouting for him to take back his words right now. The brown-haired boy shields himself from the blows of the blonde, who shouts to him that Uncle Adair is not a fugitive, but a member of the Folivia family. Eugene looks at him with an angry look and shouts that it should be a shame to laugh at others, belittling them, because such people have no feelings and honor. He smashes the fragments of his memories with his fist, exclaiming that it hurts him that he couldn't do anything back then. He swings his fist at the boy, shouting that what happened in his past life will remain in the past. Eugene grins and stares with furrowed brows, shouting that he's not like that now. The boy with red eyes looks at the blonde in surprise. Suddenly the swing of a sword is heard. The protagonist closes his eyes, opens one eye and looks. Eder stands in front of him, covering him with his body. The blonde looks at his uncle as he says with a serious face that this is a child's fight. Edric holds his sword on Eder's shoulder when he tells his uncle to put his sword away, and the protagonist is surprised by the sword. The man looks at the blonde with naked disgust and anger and shouts at Eugene that he is a wild little loser, asking what he did just now. He points his sword towards the protagonist, exclaiming, "Can he really get away without punishment by touching his grandchildren?" The blonde clenches his teeth and glares at the man, asking if the man has any problems right now. One of the twins helps the other up, and Eugene says that they insulted him and his uncle, and he was only defending their honor. He, with an angry expression on his face, says that if this is barbarism, then today he learned what this word means. And the old man was just lucky, because if the blonde were healthy and strong, he would have challenged him in return. The man looks on, biting his lip in anger. He returns the sword to its sheath and says that he thought Eugene had at least some dignity, although as expected, the apple does not fall far from the tree. The man turns around and leaves the hall, saying that they are done here and will leave all matters to the owner of the family. The protagonist looks after them in fear, wondering if they will really go to his older brother. Sweat appears on the guy's face, and he realizes that he is afraid of meeting his older brother. Sunlight illuminates the mansion. The protagonist stands straight, very worried. A man sits at a large table, addressing Eugene, who winces, saying, "Yes, brother," after which the man asks what happened that the blonde caused such a commotion. The brunette looks at the protagonist with frowning eyebrows, noting that you can't tell that Eugene has been sick all this time. After which the guy apologizes and thinks that it's his older brother Hindle Falivia. The brunette with red eyes looks down, and the blonde thinks that now his older brother is in his father's place, the new head of the Falivia family. Hindle stands up, leaning on the table, and says that an old man is coming to his meeting today, making a fuss about the fight that Eugene started. Because of this he wants to interfere with his rule here, because what's the point in a guy who can't even take care of your little brother? The guy looks up excitedly and asks about the meeting. Eugene moves closer to the man, apologizing and crying out that he didn't know he had an important meeting here. Tears appear in the blonde's eyes, and he says that he can explain everything to adults, then they will understand and he himself is to blame. Hindle stands right in front of Eugene and interrupts him with words, quietly. He says with a gloomy expression that if he accepts guilt after what he has done, then he does not think like a nobleman. The blonde tries to hold back his tears while the man says that the man named Adair Falivia is important, his influence and status in the family, to which Eugene thinks that he is a fool. The guy hangs his head and cries, saying that he didn't think about it and shouldn't have done that. The child Hindle puts a wreath on the protagonist's head, while he thinks that nothing can be forgiven, because childhood is over, and his brother is unlikely to just take pity on him, because he ruined the family's reputation, and now he probably hates him. A shadow falls over the man's eyes as the man tells Eugene that the old man told him to take responsibility for what he did, asking what he thinks. Hindle answered. The blonde wipes his tears with his hand and answers that he doesn't know. He withdraws his hand and looks surprised at Hindle, who tells him that Edric told him to shut up. The man pats the guy on the shoulder, saying that if they insult him again, they will receive his fist in return, or feel the blade of a sword touching their skin. The protagonist gets a little worried and blushes while they tell him that he has been sick for a long time, and Hindle was afraid that others would start to bully him. But he is glad that this is not the case. The man looks directly at the hero with his eyes, telling him to remain as confident and not be afraid of them. Eugene cries with joy when he is told that he is mom and dad's son, and also Hindle's little brother. He wanted to hug the man, but he stopped him. Hindle keeps the guy at a distance with his hand, saying that he cannot ignore what happened and not scold Eugene. He frowns, remembering Adair, and asks if he didn't tell the guy not to be friends with his uncle, because he knows how well they get along. But he shouldn't get close to him. Sweat appears on the blonde's face, and he thinks about his brother and uncle. He lowers his eyes and bites his lip, wondering why everyone hates Eder so much. Hindle looks at the protagonist with burning eyes, saying that he said everything clearly, but for now the guy should focus on recovery. But instead of getting well soon, he picked up a sword. From a white mansion illuminated by the sun, a man screams that Eugene will be on probation, after which the guy screams in the same way. The blonde, holding his head, shouts that probation is too much, and the servant replies that it was an assault and battery, and he should be grateful for such a punishment. The protagonist turns to the boy with tears, asking if Tyr really doesn't feel sorry for him at all, because he has long since recovered, to which the servant replies that yes, He feels sorry for Eugene, and he understands him perfectly. He puts his hand to his chest and talks about how good Tyr is because he notices everything and understands him every time. And the boy replies that the blonde can go to the training room, and if someone appears, he will immediately report this. Eugene enthusiastically jumps out of bed, asking that he can really go into the hall right now, to which the servant screams in fear that no, and if the guy takes the sword in his hands, he will immediately report this to the head. The protagonist turns away from Tyr, raising an eyebrow, saying how disgusting he is, and the boy screams that the blonde is cruel, but he is trying for his sake. The servant grits his teeth and looks at the brooding Eugene, who says that nothing can be done, and therefore he has another idea, and the boy behind him replies that he will still be watching the master anyway. The guy frowns and smiles. He waves his hand with a smile, saying that he is going to learn magic. Eugene extends his hands to Felon, saying that by learning magic, he will become just like the sorceress who saved him, and he will become a great magician. He holds his hand on his chest. The servant looks worried. Tyr looks at the guy with suspicion, asking what about fencing. He rests his chin on his hand, thinking that studying magic is still dangerous. The blonde jumps up from his seat to hug Tyr, who says that he, of course, can pretend not to know anything, and the guy thanks the servant, calling him his best friend. The protagonist smiles and hugs the blushing boy, thinking that his current life should become truly happy, the one he dreamed of in his past incarnation. He turns to the child with the backpack. Eugene smiles at his old self and tells him to look at his new life. He stands back to back with the child, saying that he honestly isn't sure about the reason Feline tied them together. The child, with tears in his eyes, listens to the guy talk about how he promises something to him, and actually to himself. Eugene, with a smile on his face and a blush, says that he will change the life the boy gave him for the better. The child looks at him with sparkling eyes, and he thinks that he is going to live his second life. A pendant with a picture of little Eugene, and the man thinks that the guy has become bigger over these 5 years. Adair smiles while his glasses cover his eyes, and thinks that the protagonist's light has not yet faded and it's time to show it to the world. Red eyes appear behind the man, and he thinks that Eugene is not at all like him. Felon extends his hand to the child, and the protagonist thinks that the meeting with the godlike magician gave them great power. Eugene stands with his back to the boy, thinking that this is his second life, and he has experienced a lot that he still cannot forget. He closes his eyes and presses his hands together, wondering what magic is. He spreads his hands in which magic appears, thinking that this is like fate. The protagonist smiles widely, blushes and is surprised, shouting that he finally succeeded. The sun is shining over a large mansion. Eugene pulls the thread of magic. He jerks it down. The guy looks at the book and says that this magic is like a string instrument, the same thing that is written in this book. He looks at his hand with magic, saying that it is the basis of the string of magic, calling it beautiful. His expression changes to awkward and he wonders what's next. The sun's rays penetrate the library while the protagonist thinks that he wants to learn magic and has rummaged through all the books and dictionaries in the Folivia library. Eugene goes through a bunch of books, screaming every now and then that one of them is only the third part, marveling at a book that was 200 years old and complaining that all the books should be in the same language. He bites his lip with tears in his eyes, saying that a certain part of the book cannot be deciphered. And once Folivia's library appeared, it was more of a mess than the used bookstores of his previous life. He peeks with one eye, saying that if he wants to learn magic on his own, he doesn't think he will have enough time, but most likely it will take a lifetime. Eugene tenses, remembering his brother, thinking that he would not agree to hire a magic teacher for him, and he wonders if Hindle would be against it. He peeks nervously with one eye, thinking that in fact, even if he somehow gets permission, Folivia mages are a little strange. 5-year-old Eugene is in a crowd of men who are screaming, "Archmage Pedro, the best magician Folivia." A muscular man with a beard swings a hammer while the crowd shouts at him that he is the master of Pedro Thunder's hammer magic, asking him to show his abilities. The little protagonist stands shocked, asking if it's magic. The man strikes the sword with his hammer as the crowd cheers, "Yes, Thunder, yes, Spark." The boy fakes a smile while the men shout that his sword has turned red from the power of thunder and a god exists, and his name is Pedro, calling it incredible magic. Eugene, with a fake wide smile, thinks that he will never study magic. He supports his chin with his hand, wondering whether the magicians here are somehow strange and whether it was magic, saying that it was a little unclear, but it would be better if he learned from a magician. Adair enters the library behind the guy, addressing Eugene. The man smiles broadly and looks at the guy, asking if he is here, what a coincidence this is, and what he is doing here alone. The protagonist forms a string of magic in his hands, telling his uncle to see that he is studying magic, to which Adair wonders if Eugene really knows how to use magic. A girl with glasses approaches the guy, greeting him and asking if there is a little magician here. Eugene lowers his head and Adair introduces him, saying it's his little nephew he was talking about. And the blonde introduces himself, saying he's Eugene Olivia and it's nice to meet you. The man points his hand at the woman with glasses, saying that she is from the School of Magic and is now on a business trip and her name is Istin, and he brought her here to introduce her to their library. The girl greets the blonde and says that her name is Istin. The guy looks at the woman worriedly as she says that she heard that Eugene was sick, but now looks healthy. He cries out questioningly if she is a magician. Adair looks at the blonde while Easton says that she has not heard that he is a magician, asking when he began to study magic. And the man asks if the guy did not start doing this in his youth, but that the protagonist replies that just started. The man and woman look at Eugene in shock. Sweat runs down their faces, and Adair asks if this is true, and Easton wonders if the guy just started studying magic and can already cast magic. Eugene scratches his cheek while the girl is shocked by his words that he was actually put on probation yesterday, and is now studying magic, to which the girl screams questioningly, seriously. Iston, with a worried expression on his face, asks where his magic teacher is. The protagonist looks at her in surprise and says that he doesn't have a teacher, to which the girl asks if he really started studying magic alone. Easton flinches and looks at the book in shock while the blonde says that after reading this book he studied on his own. And the girl with glasses wonders if it's from a book. She raises her hand to her wide open mouth, thinking that he uses magic based on the book and managed to create the runes. Baby Eugene sits and reads books, while Easton thinks about the fact that he read books as a newborn, and is a real genius, and not a child, wondering about this. The girl adjusts her glasses, asking if the protagonist could give her a minute of time, because she wants to test his abilities, to which the blonde enthusiastically agrees, and she thinks that she needs to test him. Easton holds hands with Eugene. Adair puts the book to his chin, wondering if he's serious, wondering if he understands anything. The girl stands with her eyes closed while the man ponders the fact that he is hearing an intense and skillful six-string playing, and she is still young. Eugene stands holding her hands while Adair thinks the melody is awkward but harmonious. The protagonist stands with Iston, playing violins. The man thinks that they look like a magic ensemble. The guy with his eyes closed blushes and thinks that this is surprising, and he felt such new sensations for the first time. He reaches out with his hand towards the bright light, thinking that this feeling is what is called the world of magic. Notes appear in the sky, and the protagonist realizes that he feels his magic increasing. Easton stands with his eyes closed and conducts, while Eugene ponders what it means to become a master, wondering how accurately the girl controls the strings, because it sounds and plays great, everything goes smoothly and very melodiously. The blonde forms a string of magic in his hands, thinking that he recently started playing and studying magic, and hasn't really figured it out yet. The guy stands holding the girl's hand while she thinks that this child is an absolute genius. Magical music flows through the silhouette's ears, and Iston reflects that it is similar to perfect pitch. But magic is beyond the five senses, being a rarer and more amazing talent. The pages of the book are flipped by magic, and the girl thinks that in addition to this amazing talent, Eugene is smart enough to read a book on the theory of magic on his own. The guy looks at Easton with surprise in his eyes, who tells him that the blonde has talent like a shining star, and he asks if this is really true. The girl pats the protagonist on his shoulder. She, breathing heavily and worried, asks Eugene to go to the magic school, asking why he wasn't enrolled there. Easton, with sparkling eyes, says that he is actually an assistant professor at the School of Magic, and if he wants to learn magic, then she can help him, to which the blonde is surprised. Eugene, trying to hold back his smile, thanks the girl, calling her teacher, and says that this is so similar to a dream. The guy is a little worried, tapping his fingers, and says that first he needs to get permission for this, to which the girl asks what kind of permission. The girl adjusts her sparkly glasses, saying that the teacher will sort everything out now, and he trusted her and just left it to her, to which a joyful Eugene asks really, saying that truth is cool. Hindle rubs his hands and with sparkling eyes says that he refuses. Eugene and Easton tremble, clinging to each other, while the man says that when he put the guy on probation, he immediately ran away, asking if he was studying magic. Hindle, with a menacing expression on his face, tells him not to do nonsense, because the blonde descendant of Filivius, born with a sword in his hands, is obliged to protect his family. Eugene bites his lip and looks worried. He awkwardly lowers his head down while the man tells him that because of a sudden obsession, he suddenly decided to abandon his duty, and that he should think about his uncle, because he is a nobleman who has run away from responsibility, and no one will respect such a person. The girl, with tears in her eyes, thinks that she never imagined that it would be so hard, and now she wants to leave. Easton covers the guy with his arm, shouting that despite everything, Eugene has incredible talent. The girl and guy look at Hindle in surprise when he says that it is obvious and he knows that the protagonist has talent. The man rests his chin on his hands, asking what time he spent watching his brother. How much does the girl think it was, noting that Eugene was a quick learner. Little Hindle sits next to the baby, who cries out, "Mother," to which the boy is surprised, saying that he is very talented. Little Eugene lies and draws. The man peacefully closes his eyes, saying that he has been surprised more than once by the genius of the guy, so the teacher's reaction is quite understandable. To which Easton agrees and says that you can't argue with these, and the protagonist cries out in embarrassment so that the girl does not listen to him. Eugene looks in surprise at Hindle, who says that the blonde has many talents, but he suffers from a serious illness and spent his entire childhood in bed, and he understands Eugene's desire to try something new. The man straightens up in his chair and frowns and says that this does not mean that he can allow him to do whatever he pleases. But the protagonist is obliged to Olivia, and this is not something that everyone can handle. The girl takes Eugene by the shoulders and says that Hindle really knows him well, but the blonde's magical talent is not at the level at which such a general opinion can be accepted. The man smiles evilly, looking at the girl, asks if by general opinion she really means Olivia's debt. And if she says so, then he would like to know what level the protagonist has. Easton furrowed her eyebrows, saying that, for example, the great name of Lord Hindle is heard throughout the kingdom, because at a young age he was considered the best swordsman in the kingdom, being a genius among geniuses. The man becomes gloomy, and the servant nearby is surprised when the girl says that even the man's talent is insignificant compared to Eugene's talent. The guy points his index finger at himself, asking if this is really about his talent. The girl with red hair bares her teeth. She screams with an angry look on her face that she is a child who knows how to use magic, asking if Easton understands what she is saying. And the man tells Yulia to calm down, because these are guests. The girl with glasses and Eugene stand scared because of the screaming. Hindle looks up at the girl and says that he thanks for the attention to his younger brother, and he thinks that there is no convincing evidence yet, and haven't they only known the protagonist for a couple of hours. Easton confidently stands opposite the man, asking for forgiveness and asking if his talent really hasn't gone down in history, to which the brunette replies that, given the whole long history, yes, but this sounds absurd. The dark silhouette of the woman is illuminated by the stars, and Easton says that no, this is not absurd, because now Felon's 13th student is studying at the School of Magic, a student whose talent will definitely go down in history. The girl with glasses waves her hand in the air, screaming that Eugene is like this student, and Hindle is simply ruining the protagonist's talent. Sweat runs down the red-haired man's face as Easton shouts that even though the student's and the blonde's magic styles are slightly different, they can be compared to each other. Eugene is very shocked that the girl screams that she can reassure him. Julia, with an excited expression on her face, asks if this is really the 13th student of the creator, exclaiming what nonsense. Hindle smiles and with a raised eyebrow says that this is truly the greatest compliment a magician can give, and now he understands the teacher's position. He looks at the protagonist with a piercing gaze, saying that then he needs to hear the truth from Eugene. What he wants to become, a swordsman or a magician. The blonde excitedly raises his hands to himself and says that of course he would like to be both. He gets scared, trembling all over, when Hindle says that this is impossible. A brunette with a gloomy expression on his face says that if he wants to learn magic, then let him go to a school of magic. If he wants to learn fencing, then he should stay in the family, because if magic and fencing were one thing, then he wouldn't try to dissuade him from this idea. Eugene, with a sad expression on his face, he closes his eyes, pressing his hands, says that then he made a choice. A silhouette of a girl appears behind him as he says that having been able to get back on his feet thanks to Feline's grace, he has decided to become a person who can give as much blessing as he received to others. Eugene opens his eyes and confidently says that this is why he will go out into the world and become a magician like Felon. He puts his hand to his chest and says that of course he will go to magic school first, but he will not give up fencing. Hindle, with a thoughtful expression on his face, listens as the guy talks about how, just like his brother said, he has Olivia blood flowing in him, so he is obliged to protect the world. Eugene winces, sweating a little, after the man talks about how he told him to make a choice. The brunette smiles, frowning a little, says that he understands what the protagonist means and he can study at the School of Magic, that there are magic books, all sorts of artifacts, He is ready to support the blonde in everything. Easton is held by Eugene's shoulders and they smile together. Hindle raises his index finger and says that the protagonist has something to prove to him. He raises his hand with a finger to his face, saying that in just 1 month, he must prove that he meets the requirements of the magic school. Eugene looks at the man worriedly and fearfully when he says that if he doesn't do this, then everything will be in vain. The protagonist responded by asking if he really only has a month. The little boy grows into a guy when Hindle talks about how it's a process that usually takes 10 years, but the blonde one has to do it in a month, knowing that it sounds ridiculous. The brunette closes his eyes, frowning, and says that if he is really as talented as his teacher says, then he should be able to handle it. He peeks at people with one eye. Eugene approaches the man with his arms outstretched, shouting, "Brother." He takes Hindle's hand in his and thanks his brother. The protagonist closes his eyes and smiles widely, saying that he will not disappoint him and will work hard. Drops of sweat are running down the man's face and he wonders if Eugene understands what he is doing. Because in general, in order to enter the School of Magic, a magician must obtain a qualification, which is achieved through long training for 10 years. A note is shown from the envelope, and Hindle thinks that not everyone manages to get this professional education, and in their world it is impossible for an ordinary person to become a magician in just a month, and in fact this is a refusal, but the blonde did not even change his mind. The brunette excitedly turns his gaze to Easton, thinking that even though Eugene does not know the rules, this magician must be exactly aware of everything. The guy happily approaches the woman with glasses, while the man wonders what really happened. Eugene smiles and looks at Easton, and Hindle thinks that they are confident in their abilities. Dark tentacles with eyes reach out to the light. A long time ago, a magician appeared on this land full of chaos. The girl descends to the frightened tentacles. Felon was born. The sorceress cries while the tentacles are afraid. "Mrs. Felon, please take pity on the polluted earth, create magic." The girl uses her magic to destroy the tentacles. She expelled all the monsters from the surface, so they disappeared. Felon stands on empty land. Only barren, lonely land remains. Tears flowing from her eyes, Felon looked at the empty land and felt lonely. He climbs the ladder to the stars, so Felon has found 12 disciples who follow the stars. Trees grow and flowers smell fragrant in the wind. With them she revived the earth. Easton sits under a tree with Eugene, saying that this is why they are now living in a time of peace. The land has begun to prosper, and it is all thanks to her Felon and her 12 students. A girl with glasses peeks with one eye, asking questions. Eugene falls over on his side, bored, when Easton asks if the story was boring, to which the protagonist replies that it wasn't. The girl closes her eyes and waves her hand, saying that there is no need to hide anything, because he must have become bored, because this is a boring story that he heard many times in infancy. Eugene looks away thoughtfully when Easton asks what the blonde was thinking about while listening to the story about feline. He excitedly looks away in the other direction, saying that it was emotional, and the story can make you cry a little. The girl joyfully says that there is something in this, asking if the guy felt the desire to become a creator like her. Easton opens her eyes and says with a smile that if this is really so, then she likes his attitude, and maybe now they will think like real magicians. Eugene raises his hand to his face thoughtfully when the girl says that below is a higher being who created life above this level, asking if they can call her a magician and not a god. The guy asks if that's really the case. Easton folds his hands to form light and says that miracles are closer to God. She opens her hands, forming magic, saying that Felon created their world, and this is precisely magic, consisting of tens of thousands of strings. The violin and harp fly with the help of magic, and Easton explains that magical strings are similar to the strings of a musical instrument. Depending on how you play them, the melodies differ from each other. The 4 elements merge into one whirlwind when the girl explains that you can create water or fire, wind or lightning. Flowers bloom in the sunlight. Easton explains that new life can be created. Sunlight illuminates the high rocks. The girl says that a whole world can be created. Easton demonstrates magic, sitting down on his knees, and says that magic for beginners and the magic of Felon's creativity work on the same principle. Eugene looks at the magic strings in surprise while the girl explains that these are mana. In simple words, these strings are the alpha and omega in magic. Easton forms a ball of magic strings, saying that this is why they say that the abilities of a magician depend entirely on the mana in his body, because depending on how many strings he holds in his hands, he is strong or weak, and 2 criteria are important here. The girl and the protagonist hold hands while she says that day they conducted the first test of his ability to use his strings. Magical melodies surround them as she says that he turned out to have an innate talent to play the strings of magic. Easton and Eugene stand playing musical instruments, and she says that now they will find out how many strings the protagonist has in his hands. The blonde looks excitedly at the string in his hands, asking for forgiveness. He says that he has only one string, to which the girl says that everyone started with one string. Easton summons the magic stone in his hand, saying that starting small, he can increase the power beyond the sound waves, and by reaching the 4 strings, he will gain the first magic degree. The guy looks at the girl excitedly when she says that not everyone can reach 4 strings, and the number of strings is definitely known for each person. Eugene happily looks at the girl with the device in her hands, who says that today she will use the measuring tool she borrowed from the head to assess the protagonist's potential, to which the guy replies yes. Excitement appears on the blonde's face. He asks how many strings he can have, because if there are few, it will not be good, to which Easton says that there is no need to worry. The girl opens one eye and tells him with a smile not to worry too much. Eugene looks at the sorceress, puzzled, as she says that while the number of strings is important, it is not the basis for magic, to which the guy asks if it really is. Easton points the finger of his hand into the air, saying that even if there are a lot of strings, not everyone can use their powers to the maximum. Although nowadays young magicians are too fixated on the number of strings, the blonde says that he understands everything. A girl with burning lights in her eyes explains that innate talent is inherent only in a few. Not everyone reaches even an average level of magic, but some teachers ignore students with a small number of strings and do not take them into account. The guy excitedly says that he understands what the sorceress has in mind. Easton hands the device into Eugene's hands, saying that she is excited, although in any case, the number of strings is not the main thing now, and even if the protagonist has talent, he must work to develop it. The guy looks at the device in his hands with enthusiasm, while the girl tells him not to get hung up on the number of strings, to which the blonde responds positively. Eugene closes his eyes with a smile as the sorceress tells him to close his eyes. He listens with peace on his face as Easton says that the focus is on the image of magic, and therefore the blonde needs to imagine the strings, and the protagonist wonders what he considers magic, because in a past life, a present life, the pain that he experienced. The woman holds the child by the hair, saying that this non-entity should go away, because he is nothing but problems, and that he should die. The boy looks at his bloody hand. The blonde child bleeds from his mouth while the others worry if it's blood. Felon holds a dark-haired boy with wings in his hand. Wings of bright light appear behind Eugene, and he wonders what magic means to him, realizing that it is healing. Easton's face is illuminated by a bright light from the device. Sweat appears on her face and she asks what really is happening. Eugene looks fearfully at the device in the guy's hands, wondering if it really has one string. He sits next to Easton and screams, does he really only have one string? The girl looks at the protagonist in confusion while he thinks about what is obvious, although the number of strings is not so important. An image of one string appears on the device, when Eugene wonders if it's really just one string, because in any case, this way he won't be able to become a magician. Sweat appears on the blonde's face as he considers that he only has one string. Eugene looks fearfully at Easton, turning to her. The girl looks at the guy with excitement on her face, thinking that even the sky has turned black, because such a talented boy has only one string, which she cannot believe. Eugene, with a frightened expression on his face, listens as the girl says that she apologizes, but in fact, a person with one string cannot become a magician. He stands in the pouring rain as Easton says that she didn't think it would end like this, and apologizes, saying that she gave false expectations. The guy, with tears in his eyes, asks what's wrong with Felon, because he's a magician, although in any case now he won't be able to become one. He wipes a tear from his face with his sleeve, telling Felon to forgive him, because she shouldn't have chosen such a pathetic guy like him. A large red umbrella appears above Eugene's head while the guy says that he just didn't know. Adair excitedly looks away from the blonde guy, saying that it's raining and the guy might get sick. The man with a smile and joy on his face says that he is glad that they met again, asking if he is really resting after the magic lesson. Eugene looks at Adair with teary eyes as he says that he seems tipsy, but noticing his face, he wonders. The guy presses his tear-stained face to the man, shouting, "Uncle." Light steam comes out of the cup. Eugene sits on the bed with a sad face, saying that he can't change his sad expression. Adair, with a towel on his head, says that the guy doesn't need to act like an adult, at least in front of him, because if he has any problems, then he can tell him without hesitation. Eugene, with tears in his eyes, asks what he should do, because he was told that he could not become a magician. Adair thinks with pity on his face. A man with a smile on his face turns to the guy that although he does not know the reason, He is sure of it, because there is not so little time left until the end of the month. Eugene tearfully cries out that it's just a month, just 1 month, and he won't be able to become a first-class magician in just a month. Adair turns his whole body towards the protagonist, saying that this really requires a miracle. But hasn't the guy already performed it? The man smiles and looks at Eugene, saying that he doesn't know much about magic, and he doesn't know how difficult it is to study. Adair stands shocked in the middle of the street while he explains that he is a doctor, and it was a miracle for him that he woke up and remembers it well. Eugene runs towards him with a crutch, while the man thinks that one of the reasons why he began to practice medicine was that he wanted to see the guy healthy and cheerful. The protagonist looks away in the other direction and blushes. He looks at Adair worriedly, saying that he makes him feel awkward and now he feels remorse, to which the man chuckles. The man brings the mug to his face, saying that he is sure that a miracle can happen twice, although this is a meaningless statement. But Eugene says that everything is not so and it is ridiculous because just 1 month is not enough. Adair raises the index finger of his hand, saying that isn't it a whole month, because some achieve their goals in a short period of time. Eugene looks up excitedly when his uncle asks if this isn't the perfect time to start training. Adair raises his hand to the guy's face and says that in desperation, people are ready to go through fire and water, asking if the protagonist can put aside his business and start again. Eugene bites his lip, saying that's true. He pushes the blanket away from him with his hand, thanking his uncle and saying that thanks to him, he understood what he needed to do. Adair raises his drink and tells him not to worry about it. He smiles and takes a sip from his mug, thinking that even if his advice didn't really help him, it seems like he was up to something, because he always finds a way out. Lights shine from the windows of houses in the night, and someone wonders. Easton excitedly adjusts his glasses and asks how magicians with 1 string train. Eugene looks at her enthusiastically when she says no, and the guy asks if that's really the case. Easton raises his hand to his face, saying that theoretically, from the point of view of a teacher, it is difficult to say whether any training can be selected. The girl looks at the blonde in surprise as he shouts out that everything is fine, and no matter how difficult it is, let her teach him. Eugene smiles and presses his hand, saying that despite the month, instead of grieving, he will train with 1 string. The girl looks at the guy with surprise on her face when he says that he wants to try so as not to regret it later. Easton closes her eyes, saying that she was fired from her position as a teacher. She confidently adjusts her glasses, saying that if a student does not give up, then the teacher has no right to give up, and now they cannot give up. The girl approaches the protagonist, clenching her fists, and says that they need to try, and everything will work out for them, so they need to create new rules for themselves. She extends her hand, bending her thumb, and says that in order to use magic, then, as she said, you need at least 4 strings. Eugene clenches his hands into fists with enthusiasm and listens as the girl talks about how he doesn't have them and he can't use magic. Easton raises his index finger, saying that however, his 1st string will work wonders, and they will rely on it, that's for sure. Eugene nods affirmatively with sparkling eyes. Easton points to his 4-fingered hand, saying that he can use 1 string as 4 by changing its appearance. The guy desperately wonders if this is true. A guy with a tense face is trying to cast a spell. Magic explodes in his hands and he screams. Eugene slams his hands on the table, crying out if he's failed again, and if he tries to open it, she explodes, feeling that it won't work, and wondering if it's possible to use 1 string instead of 4, because it makes no sense. The guy, with a thoughtful look on his face, says that performing such a trick is like connecting an elephant and a refrigerator, wondering why such thoughts come to his mind. He looks down at his hands excitedly, saying that it is better to stop thinking about strange things, and he must concentrate, because the teacher said that this is the only way. Eugene, with an angry expression on his face, looks towards the shouts about what he is doing, and the guy sighs, saying that it's them again. The guy sighed long, while the twins said that it was too noisy and why 1 string was so loud, and the other wondered how to use 1 string, and the protagonist, calling them Rob and Locke, asked them to just leave him alone. Eugene pokes one of them on the shoulder, asking if he has come to be beaten again. Rob's expression changes to an angry one and he asks what he is talking about, because if this was a real sparring, then you would have died long ago. Eugene and the boy touch their foreheads when the boy asks if he really does, because if he feels injustice, then why don't they start a battle? And the boy says that's what he came for. The blonde jumps away from Rob and says that to be honest, it's a little wrong for him to fight here, but the boy replies that of course he won't be too cruel. Tentacles with eyes cross the fence as the boy says that as guardians of the Western Horizon, They must fight above the abyss. Rob closes one eye and waves his hand, saying that they will compete as the Sleen of the Falivia family. The twin clenches his fist and puts it in front of him, shouting that they will organize a hunt for the minions of the abyss, a hunt for monsters. Eugene is shocked and raises his hand to himself, saying that he has really gone crazy. What kind of monster hunt is there? The guy puts his hands in different directions. Excited, he shouts for the guys to think with their heads, because he will tell his brother everything. And Rob asks what he is afraid of, to which the guy replies that it's not bad to be afraid, and they shouldn't do that. The boy raises one of his eyebrows, asking if they won't do this when they're older and why not. To which Locke tells them to leave the coward and get out of there, and Eugene says that's because they're still not adults. But hunting monsters is not a child's game, so they don't go there alone. Rob waves his hand in front of the guy, saying that he seems to have not understood him at all, because there was a request for help from the village, to which the protagonist wonders if this is really so, and from whom this request is coming. Locke turns to the small child in rags, telling him to come out and Eugene to explain. The blonde boy looks at the little boy in shock, asking if this is the baby. The kid wipes his tears with his hand, saying that this is not a joke and the adults were caught, and he doesn't know what to do now. Eugene approaches the baby, taking him by the shoulders, telling Locke that if it was urgent, then he should have told the adults, turning to the baby and asking if everything was okay and what village he was from, telling him not to listen to the twins and talk to him. The twins make dissatisfied expressions on their faces, and Locke asks what they are doing here, while the protagonist says that now he will tell the adults about everything and they will bring help for the boy. The kid touches his fingers and looks down, saying that the guy was mistaken and in fact the child is not a boy, and Eugene gets scared and asks for forgiveness, calling the kid a girl. One of the twins calls the guy an idiot. Rob stands towering over Eugene, saying what will happen next after he tells the adults, so that he considers that he has already lost to him, to which the blonde, angry, replies that the little girl said that even the adults were captured there. The protagonist stands up, approaching the twins, and says that hunting monsters is not so important now, to which Rob says that now is the time, why be angry about it? Eugene looks at the boy in shock, asking what he's talking about now, and Rob replies that looking at the baby now he wants to tell everything, that the result of his action will be obvious right now. The guy looks at the little girl in fear as the boy continues that the village will be demolished and the villagers will be sentenced to hard labor, asking if that's what she wants. Rob waves his hand in front of the frightened protagonist, saying that of course he doesn't care and has nothing to lose, but it's a pity that they don't know how to hunt monsters, because they would have freed these people from terrible monsters by now. Dead trees stand among wooden houses. Pink clouds float across the sky. A monster in the form of a dog ran out of the forest. Eugene screams with excitement, there is a monster there. He took out his sword with a stern expression on his face. Eugene runs after the monster with a sword, shouting that if he is destroying everyone here, then let him attack him. He rushes after the dog deep into the forest. Eugene is being followed by red eyes from the forest. The protagonist is surrounded by walls of red eyes while he screams that he is not done with the monster yet. Eugene screams and runs after the monster. He bites his lip and uses magic on his sword to say that if the dog runs away, he will only have one option. The monster is stunned by a magical blow. Eugene stands with his sword raised over the monster. He cuts the dog in half with his sword. Parts of the dog fall on different sides. Eugene waves his arms and smiles, shouting that he finally defeated him and did it with his magic. The twins appear behind an irritated Eugene and Rob asks if it was really magic, because it was so weak that it was powerless even against this monster. To which Locke asks if all this fuss was really about one monster. Eugene, angrily clenching his fists, asks if they really think this is a trifle, because he spent so much time trying to catch him. To which one of the boys tells him not to boast about his magic, and the protagonist screams that he caught him anyway. The blonde angrily bites his lip and asks how many monsters Rob has already caught. To which he, throwing his sword over his shoulder, replies that the guy should go and look. The sun illuminates a small and empty village. Eugene raises his eyebrows and sighs in surprise. Rob points to a mountain of monster corpses, saying that the guy should look and understand that he has already lost to them. Eugene gets excited, sweat rolls down his face and he says, damn, thinking that although he's angry, let's face it, these guys are amazing. The monster's head separates from its body, while the blonde thinks that if they caught so many monsters, it means that they are very different from himself, because they destroyed them, precisely targeting their weak points. A pile of corpses of monster dogs with wounds on their heads. Hindle holds the shining sword in front of him while Eugene thinks that it is immediately clear that the twins are experienced guys and they prove that Olivia is a high-level swordsman. The twins, with an arrogant expression on their faces, say that they knew that the blonde would lose, and thought that he would not catch a single monster. Eugene is angry, clenching his hands into fists. He thinks that although this irritates him, these guys are really stronger than him. A little girl approaches the fair-haired guy and exclaims that he caught one, and this is already amazing, because even adults could not cope with the wolves, to which the protagonist thanks her. The girl looks away in the other direction, asking that they really helped her and how she can now repay this kindness. The twins turn their displeased glances at the little girl, asking if she can really give them a reward for killing monsters more than their own socks are worth, saying that she doesn't have to pay. To which Eugene angrily screams for them to stop being rude and be grateful to anyone the reward they will be given. The girl stands and cries while Rob tells the adults to look into this, asking if the little girl knows where people from the village could have been taken. She looks down at the floor, saying that as soon as she woke up, the people were no longer there, and therefore she doesn't know where they are. Rob looks at the little girl with contempt, asking why did she really think that people were captured by a monster. To which the girl replies that when people suddenly disappear, everyone says that it is the work of a monster, to which Locke screams that she is making fun of them. The twins think, sighing and rubbing their chins. One of them asks, so she doesn't know for sure, saying that only a decrepit old man and a little girl are left. What do you think? That they were left on purpose, and the other says that nothing can be done about it, so they need to deal with it and go home. Eugene crossed his arms over his chest, wondering if the boys are so conscientious, although arrogant, but they bear responsibility for their actions, after which one of the twins turns to him. Rob points his finger at the gate, saying that now they are going to conduct additional reconnaissance and find people. He will get rid of the corpses of monsters, and the guy should look after the baby for now. The guy excitedly says that they should do it together. The boy raises one eyebrow and smiles angrily, saying that the roles are distributed in accordance with abilities, asking if the guy has any objections. Eugene grits his teeth and clenches his fist, wondering what kind of nasty twin he is. The heads of the monsters are burning in the fire. Screams can be heard from the wooden house asking if grandfather can hear him. Eugene waves his hand and frowns, saying that the entire village was destroyed, and they destroyed several monsters. But the rest must be furious and the old man should at least tell the guy something. The blonde closes one of his eyes, saying that he will not prove to him that he is a reliable warrior, but promises that he will be safe with him. To which the old man, with an irritated look, says that Eugene is annoying. He hits the protagonist's hand with his hand, feigning a smile and saying that he is very grateful that such young sword masters are helping him. To which the blonde asked what the old man had just said before, and he replied that he did not understand what he was talking about. Guy. He's a little deaf. Eugene rubs his hand from the blow and says that now he will not hint or ask without clarification. He turns his gaze to the window and tells the old man to explain what happened, because they say that the villagers have disappeared and he suspects that the monsters have entered their territory. The sun illuminates the empty wooden houses while the protagonist says that there are no signs of an invasion in this village, and the only creatures that were here were wolf monsters. Eugene raises his hand to his face and says that if the villagers were carried away by a wolf, there would be pools of blood, asking what happened. The old man looked at the guy with contempt in his eyes. Eugene sighs while the old man with a smile on his face says that he really doesn't know anything himself, because old age has ruined his memory and even yesterday seems very far away. The guy goes to the door. Opening it, he says that since the old man doesn't know anything, then he has no choice but to look for evidence on his own. The baby runs up to the protagonist, holding out her arms and shouting that she will go with him, to which Eugene tells her to stay and rest here, because she must be very tired. The old man sits leaning on a cane and asks why then doesn't the little girl stay here with him. The old man looks at the child with red eyes, telling her to come here and stay next to him. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes. The little girl comes closer to the old man while he apologizes for the child's unreasonableness, to which the protagonist says that in fact she's doing the opposite. Eugene raises one eyebrow and says he's afraid she's tired and worried about her, wondering why the atmosphere is so different now. The old man with a smile on his face says that he is happy because of how kind the protagonist has a heart and he is so worried about these poor people, suggesting that the little girl must be really tired, and Eugene wonders how strange the old man is. The old man smiles, and the child looks at him while he says that he will wash the baby in the bathroom and put her to bed, and at the same time she will look after her grandfather. The guy looks at them in fear. The girl presses her hands to herself and screams about what she doesn't want, asking why she should be with her grandfather at all. Eugene stops in front of the door and thinks after the old man asks what's the matter and is the boy really shy. The guy fearfully remembers that the baby is actually a girl. Eugene covers the child with his hand while he screams that she is not a boy, and the old man seems to have forgotten about it again, and the blonde says that he will take the child with him. The protagonist stands holding the girl by the shoulder and says that he thought a little and decided that it would be good if someone guided him, to which the old man says that since he says so, then let him take the child with him. The old man looks at the guys with red eyes. Eugene takes the child's hand and turns around. The old man with his head bowed says that despite this, he is the person who was raised with honor and he turned out to be an amazing person. And although life is all they have, Eugene's life is much more precious, so he needs to take care of it, because it can disappear anytime. The protagonist looks back with worry on his face while the old man talks about not worrying too much about people like them, because they are ordinary mortals. The girl walks through the village, wondering how long ago her grandfather became so strange, to which she says that he has been behaving this way for about a month. A crowd of adults looks at the old man while the girl says that it seems that today he is fine. But before it was even worse, and even the villagers did not know what to do with him, because at some point he began to draw strange pictures, saying something incomprehensible. Grown-up women talk among themselves about how this fate will affect them all in old age, and the girls say that the adults said that grandfather had simply gone crazy and everyone did nothing but whisper about him. Eugene holds the baby by the shoulders while she asks why he asked her this. Pink clouds are floating across the sky and Eugene asks where he can see the old man's drawings, and the girl says that it's not far. The blonde man looks at the drawing with surprise and horror. Drops of sweat appeared on his face and he thought that he had only hoped in vain, and the little girl asked what was wrong. The girl looked at the stone in front of her and asked if Eugene knew what it meant. The blonde bites his lip in excitement and thinks about how to say that the members of the Falivia family studied symbols before moving on to letters. In front of Eugene is a stone with a bloody symbol, a symbol consisting of circles of different sizes, and this symbol means an old enemy. The blonde thinks that he is being used to show the criticality of the situation. Eugene frowns and thinks that the only good news is that Falivia has already defeated her sworn enemy, and he knows this better than anyone. There is a rock among the tree branches, and the blonde asks Jin if it is possible to find a large cave or something similar here, to which the little girl replies that yes, there is one nearby, although the adults forbade her to go there. The protagonist asks her to lead him there. Eugene holds a burning torch in his hands. He moves on with excitement on his face, thinking that a person who is going crazy, mysterious disappearances, are signs of only one event. The protagonist illuminates another symbol with a torch and a worshipper of the abyss pops up in his thoughts. One large eye with several pupils opens, and Eugene reflects that the first magician destroyed the monsters, but the servants of the abyss still remained. The silhouette of a girl extends her hand, and the guy understands that these people do not consider the creator Felon the creator of all living things. Eugene and Gina stand with shock on their faces while the guy thinks that in order to erase feline from the people's memory, they are sacrificing people. The corpses of people lie wrapped in hay, men and women without feelings. Eugene illuminates the space of the cave and understands that these people are being offered to the abyss. Gina runs towards the people, shouting that Uncle Ramon and Sister Rosa are there. Sweat runs down Eugene's face, and he thinks that everything here is much worse than he thought, and the children definitely won't be able to do anything here. He looks back, thinking that he urgently needs to inform the adults about this. An old man somewhere in the darkness says that the first prophet said that they cannot avoid difficulties, but those who take care of lower beings like them become their salvation. Jean and Eugene turn back in fear when the old man continues that the sinner asks the prophet what needs to be done to be saved, and the prophet answered that he needed to repent, and he asked what needed to be done in order to repent. The old man, scratching his face, asked what needs to be done to repent. The old man peels off his skin and says that they need to be burned and buried in a well. The old man, having torn off his skin, begins to scream loudly. The old man with tears in his eyes shouts that they all need to be destroyed, that they need to move forward, because there is very little left, and the descendant of the Falivia family interferes with the events of the outside world. Eugene covers the girl's body while she asks if it's grandpa. The old man forms a fireball in his hand and shouts that he will perish in hell so that he burns. Eugene opens his eyes in surprise, asking if he is using magic. He picks up Jin and dodges. The protagonist falls into the mud. He opens one eye and looks at the old man, thinking that he didn't even think that the old man was a magician, and even strong enough, and why someone like him ended up in such a situation. The guy nervously looks around, wondering what he should do in this situation, because he can't just run away, and even if he fights, he won't have any chance of winning. The brunette stands holding his sword nearby, and the blonde thinks that if his brother were in his place now, he would cut the old man's magic with one swing of his sword. But the guy, even being a member of the Olivia family, could not become the same as him brother. Eugene, with excitement on his face, raises his hand, thinking that maybe he was too selfish, and why didn't he tell the adults everything? Although at least he should have hidden Jean, and he brought her here and put her in danger. The protagonist grabs his head with his hands, shouting that what an idiot he is, and that now is not the time to regret, but to think about what to do next, although he cannot think straight now. The girl who was nearby began to scream loudly. Several dogs appear in front of them, and the girl screams that monsters have come. Eugene grits his teeth and tenses his eyebrows. He grabs his sword with his hand. With a swing of his weapon, he cuts one of the monsters. Then he uses another attack to cut off the monster's head. Eugene's brow furrows and sweat runs down his face as he realizes that he needs to put aside his regrets for later, and now he needs to save Jin. The girl lies near the corpses with tears in her eyes. The old man looks at the guy with crazy eyes while he wonders what he can do in such a situation. The old man raises his hand, forming a magic ball in it. With madness in his eyes, he shouts that Olivia will be an excellent victim for the abyss. Eugene's skin crawls and he shudders, thinking that in order to protect someone in such a situation, you need to be able to cast spells. The guy's eyes lit up. He frowned and came to the conclusion that he needed to be able to use magic. Eugene takes a fighting stance in front of the ball, thinking that this is Folivius's path.